At 32, I stood in my own bedroom, staring at a piece of paper that proved my parents had bought my husband. They didn't just encourage him to leave me. They cut a check for $750,000 from their holding company to make sure he packed his bags while I was still at work. I thought finding his empty closet was the worst part. It wasn't. The text message my mother sent me 10 minutes later, pretending to be the grieving, supportive parent, was worse. And what I did about it 3 months later, standing in a Nashville courtroom while the judge read a document they never knew existed, is the part my mother still has nightmares about. She started shaking so hard she dropped her designer purse. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The evening everything cracked open started with the sound of tires peeling off wet asphalt. I stood on the wraparound porch of my restored Craftsman house in East Nashville. My key was halfway into the brass lock. I turned just in time to see the taillights of Julian's sports car cutting through the evening fog. He took the corner at the end of Elm Street far too fast. I pushed the front door open. The house was unnervingly still. No jazz playing from the kitchen speaker. No clinking of ice in his Scotch glass. Just the lingering scent of his expensive cologne and the low hum of the hallway vent. I set my briefcase on the entryway table and walked up the heart pine staircase. I already knew what I would find. The primary bedroom looked untouched, save for the closet door standing ajar. Julian's side, the space that usually housed an array of tailored suits and custom loafers, was bare. Only a few wire hangers remained, swinging slightly from the draft. He had packed with reckless speed. I didn't panic. Forensic accounting trains you to look for anomalies, the subtle details left behind in a rush. There it was, sitting on the center of the mahogany dresser, weighed down by a discarded silver tie clip, a crumpled piece of paper. I picked it up. I smoothed the creases with my thumb. It was a bank wire confirmation slip. The numbers stood stark black against the white page. $750,000. I checked the routing details. The receiving end was Julian's private offshore account, the one he assumed I didn't monitor. But the sender's information made the temperature in the room drop. Dixon Holdings LLC, my parents' primary corporate entity. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen lit up with a new message from my mother, Evelyn. Julian called us. He told us he is leaving. We are so sorry, Hazel. Perhaps it is for the best. Come to Sunday dinner. We will get through this together. I stared at the glowing text. The wording was clinically precise, rehearsed. Evelyn didn't do spontaneous empathy. The timestamp on the wire transfer showed the funds had cleared at 2:00 in the afternoon. Julian had not just decided to leave. He had been bought out. My parents wrote a check to rid their family of the son-in-law they deemed low class, packaging the transaction as a tragic abandonment so they could play the role of saviors. I locked my phone. I didn't shed a single tear. A cold, mechanical clarity settled over me. I walked out of the bedroom and down the hall to my home office. I knelt in front of the wall, safe hidden behind a framed architectural blueprint. I punched in the 6-digit code and waited for the steel door to click open. Reaching past a stack of tax ledgers, I extracted a thick blue folder. I opened it and traced my finger over the crisp signature on the final page. It was a post-nuptial agreement Julian signed 3 years ago. My parents knew nothing about its existence. Julian, in his greed and arrogance, clearly forgot the fine print. The trap was already set. They just didn't know they had walked into it. 4 days passed. Sunday evening arrived with the stifling humidity typical of late summer in Tennessee. I drove my sedan through the wrought iron gates of my parents' estate in Belle Meade. The property was a sprawling Mediterranean stucco construction. It looked expensive but lacked any real foundation, much like the people residing inside it. I parked next to Vanessa's pristine white luxury SUV. She always bought a new vehicle every 2 years, usually right after closing a commercial real estate deal our father had handed to her on a silver platter. I sat in my car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I adjusted my breathing. Tonight was an exercise in surveillance. The heavy oak front door opened before I could knock. The housekeeper let me in, taking my coat with a sympathetic nod. The dining room smelled of roasted lamb, garlic, and expensive Merlot. Crystal water glasses caught the ambient light from the overarching chandelier. Evelyn sat at the head of the long mahogany table. Richard sat opposite her. Vanessa claimed the seat to Evelyn's right, the designated and permanent spot for the golden child. I took the empty chair near the kitchen swinging door. The air in the room felt thick, weighed down by the performance they were about to execute. "Hazel, darling," Evelyn began. Her voice hit that exact pitch of faux sympathy she reserved for charity galas and public apologies. "We have barely slept since Julian called us. You look so thin, you really must eat." I picked up my silver fork. "I'm fine, Mother." "There is no need to be brave," Richard chimed in. He sliced his portion of lamb with surgical precision, the knife scraping the china plate. "These things happen in life. Some men simply lack the fortitude for the expectations of this family." I chewed my food slowly. The irony tasted metallic on my tongue. He spoke about fortitude while sitting on a secret $750,000 wire transfer. They bought my husband, shipped him off, and now sat at the Sunday dinner table pretending to be the pillars of moral support. Vanessa swirled her wine. Her diamond tennis bracelet clinked against the delicate stem of the glass. Honestly, Hazel, we all saw this coming. He always had one foot out the door. You cannot fault a guy for recognizing he is out of his depth and running for the hills. She took a slow sip, her eyes tracking my reaction. Besides, I hear Miami weather is perfect right now. A clean break is exactly what he needs to reset, Miami. She dropped the city name casually, rubbing her temples and complaining of a sudden migraine. My fork paused a fraction of an inch above my plate. Julian hated Florida. He despised the humidity, the crowds, the culture. Why would Vanessa pinpoint Miami? I filed the geographic detail away in the back of my mind. Every word they spoke was a loose thread, and I was quietly gathering them to weave a rope. We are here to support you financially, emotionally, whatever you require, Evelyn said. She reached across the table to pat my hand. Her skin felt dry, her touch light and fleeting, retreating almost as quickly as it landed. You can always move back into the East Wing until you figure out what to do with that drafty little house of yours. We can help you start over. I appreciate the offer, I replied, keeping my face entirely blank. I let my shoulders slump forward just a fraction. But I need to manage this transition on my own. The fourth message was a terrifying silence followed by a sharp, panicked click as she hung up the receiver. She finally understood. She had tried to drown me, but I owned the water. I finished my workday with a profound sense of operational clarity. I packed my briefcase, sliding the transition documents into their designated compartments. The sun was beginning to set as I locked my office door and took the elevator down to the subterranean parking garage. The concrete structure was dimly lit, echoing with the distant sounds of downtown traffic. I walked toward the designated rideshare pickup zone near the southern exit. My heels clicked rhythmically against the pavement. The shadows between the concrete pillars seemed deeper than usual. I checked my phone for the driver's estimated arrival time. A figure stepped out from behind a concrete support column, blocking my path to the exit. The overhead fluorescent light flickered, illuminating the tailored Italian suit and the arrogant familiar smirk I hadn't seen in person since the day he packed his bags. Julian. He looked tanned, likely from the Florida sun, but his eyes carried a frantic, restless energy. He stood between me and the exit doors, invading my space with the entitled posture of a man who believed he still held the winning hand. "Hello, Hazel," he said, his voice echoing in the empty garage. "We need to have a conversation about my money." The concrete walls of the subterranean garage swallowed the sound of the evening traffic above. Julian took a step closer, his leather shoes scraping against the grit of the pavement. The fluorescent light hummed a steady, irritating pitch, casting harsh shadows across his face. I didn't step back. I maintained my ground, letting him close the physical distance, while I mentally assessed the situation. He wore a light linen suit, a style far too relaxed for a Nashville autumn. He looked tanned, likely from the Florida sun, but a sheen of nervous sweat coated his forehead. His pupils were dilated, his movements jittery. The Miami lifestyle was clearly burning through his capital faster than he anticipated. The confidence he tried to project was a thin veneer over sheer panic. I slid my right hand into the deep pocket of my trench coat. My thumb found the familiar groove of the side button on my smartphone. I pressed it twice, activating the hidden voice memo application I had configured for discreet client meetings. A subtle haptic vibration against my palm confirmed the microphone was live and recording. "Your money?" I asked, keeping my tone perfectly even. "Trenton Sterling filed the petition for 50% of my firm. The courts will decide what belongs to you, Julian. We have nothing to discuss in a parking garage." He let out a sharp, derisive scoff, shaking his head. "Don't play the patient professional with me. Hazel, I drove past the East Nashville property this morning. There is a pending contract sign stabbed into the front yard. Your luxury sedan is gone. You are taking the public bus like a college student. You are liquidating everything you own just to keep your head above water." I allowed my shoulders to drop a fraction of an inch, projecting the exhaustion and defeat he desperately needed to see. "Legal retainers are expensive. You forced my hand. I have to protect my operational overhead. Julian, you know how tight the margins are right now." He ran a hand through his styled hair, a gesture of profound irritation. "You were dragging this out of spite. I need liquidity now. Miami is not cheap. The Brickell penthouse requires substantial upkeep, and the startup investments I made are requiring more seed capital than I projected. I cannot wait for months of discovery hearings." "Brickell is a beautiful district," I murmured. I kept my voice soft, ensuring the microphone picked up his response clearly over the ambient noise. "But $35,000 a month is a heavy financial burden for one person, unless Vanessa is contributing her real estate commissions to the rent." He froze, The arrogant smirk faltered for a microsecond before his ego papered over the slip. He assumed my knowledge was just country club gossip, a rumor whispered over champagne. Vanessa understands how to live properly. She appreciates the environment I am building for us. We are doing fine, but I have immediate obligations and I am tired of waiting for your lawyers to stall the process. He stepped into my personal space. The scent of his cologne was overpowering, mixed with the stale, sour odor of a daytime martini. He was trying to use his physical presence to intimidate me, a tactic that might have worked 3 years ago. Today, it merely highlighted his lack of actual power. Here is how this is going to work, Julian dictated, pointing a finger toward my face. You are going to instruct your attorney to draft a settlement agreement by Friday morning. You will buy me out of the firm for a lump sum cash. If you refuse, if you try to drag me into a courtroom, I am going to the Nashville Business Journal. The Journal? I asked, tilting my head slightly. What exactly will you tell them? I will tell them the truth, he sneered, his voice echoing off the concrete pillars. Or at least a version of it that makes a compelling headline. I will say I uncovered widespread embezzlement within Dixon Futsal Forensics during our marriage. I will claim you are cooking the books for your commercial clients to hide your own insolvency. It does not have to be proven in a court of law to ruin you, Hazel. Once that rumor hits the press, your pristine reputation evaporates. Your remaining clients will scatter like roaches when the lights come on. He was using my own mother's tactic, only with less finesse and significantly less capital. My parents shielded her from the natural consequences of her own choices. In doing so, they engineered her ultimate destruction. They ensured she would completely crumble the very moment real adversity arrived in the form of a seasoned judge and a stack of forensic audits. They didn't love Vanessa. They merely maintained her as a brand ambassador, leaving her morally hollow and completely dependent on their corrupt machinery. Conversely, look at the burden placed upon me. By attempting to bleed their youngest daughter dry, the parents vastly underestimated the formidable resilience born from emotional neglect. When you raise a child in the freezing shadow of constant favoritism, you don't break their spirit. You forge a relentless survivor. A child denied fairness learns to read the fine print of human nature. They observe the discrepancies between what is spoken at the dinner table and what is done in the shadows. They become highly proficient forensic accountants of human behavior. I didn't defeat my family out of malice. I defeated them utilizing the exact tools of cold detachment they forced me to develop in order to survive my own childhood. Long-term guidance requires the profound courage to model integrity, especially when telling the truth is intensely inconvenient. It demands the emotional intelligence to recognize a child as an autonomous individual possessing their own spirit, rather than treating them as an extension of a parental ego. The tragedy defining the Belmead mansion was the profound, echoing absence of truth. A healthy American family thrives on the quiet, unglamorous daily work of accountability. You teach a child honesty by demonstrating unwavering honesty. You teach them fairness by holding the ethical line even when maintaining that line damages your precious social standing at the country club. The Dixons deliberately chose the opposite path. They chose the illusion of prestige over the substance of character. They prioritized the appearance of family loyalty over the actual practice of it. They believed they could purchase an alternative reality, utilizing stolen inheritance money to sweep their moral failures under a luxurious rug. And in committing to that deception, they lost the very thing they spent a lifetime frantically trying to control. Their legacy, the name they fought so brutally to protect, is now permanently synonymous with felony fraud and moral bankruptcy. There's a terrifying, brilliant clarity in watching a false narrative collapse under the weight of undeniable proof. We spend our entire lives gathering the silent receipts of our daily experiences. We learn exactly who stands firmly beside us in the dark, and who is merely calculating their next opportunistic move in the light. The family unit is supposed to be the ultimate safe harbor. When that harbor turns out to be a trap, the resulting shockwave forces a total reevaluation of everything we understand about trust. If you have ever recognized the hollow metallic echo of conditional love, you understand this reality. If you have ever found the quiet strength to stand up and walk away from a table where you are being served nothing but lies as, "You belong here with us." We are building a community of individuals who refuse to carry the toxic burdens passed down by previous generations. Drop a comment below to share your own journey of securing quiet dignity and reclaiming your peace. Please follow the Aura Vengeance channel for more narratives about breaking generational cycles, discovering your hidden power, and leaving manipulative legacies exactly where they belong, in the dust. We all sit down to a Sunday dinner eventually. We look across the expanse of polished mahogany wood and the gleaming crystal glasses, staring directly at the faces of the people who shaped the architecture of our early world. The unspoken question remains hovering heavy in the space between the passing of plates and the polite, rehearsed conversation. What exactly are we feeding each other? Are we passing down the solid, nourishing weight of genuine support and unconditional respect? Or are we serving beautifully plated manipulation, seasoned with hidden motives and silent demands? The true ledgers of our lives are written in the quietest moments. They are recorded in the promises kept, the apologies sincerely offered, and the difficult truths we choose to acknowledge rather than hide. When the final audit of your family history is conducted, long after the noise fades and the dinner guests return home, what will the underlying numbers reveal? You might want to check the ink before you sign your name to the narrative.